Media Melanie Talks TV. I'm Melanie, and today I'm back to talk about Dexter Original Sin on Paramount Plus with Showtime. I've got to think that episode 6, which is called The Joy of Killing, could potentially be a nod to a timeless book from the 70s, The Joy of Sex. There's also another timeless book from, I believe, the 30s called The Joy of Cooking, but I've got to say, since we saw Dexter take his first step into sexual activity, probably a nod to The Joy of Sex. Dexter also celebrates his serial killer birthday in this episode, his very first, and we see a lot of storyline mirroring going on here. But before we dive into that, please be sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my TV talk. Okay, first and foremost, in terms of the storyline mirroring, we have Dexter telling the rest of the police crew that the FBI defines a serial killer as someone with 3 or more kills. So not only is Dexter celebrating his 3rd kill in this episode, but also he's connecting the dots and really becoming in tune with evaluating these crime scenes. He does think that these murders they've been investigating are connected, and he ends up saying that it seems like this was a pleasurable kill. The killer is still kind of learning and figuring out what he likes, and LaGuardia is not at first open to Dexter's opinion of it, but she does end up coming around. Because very clearly, there is some sort of connection here. And what I'm wondering is, with Dexter going on this same journey of refining his methodology, his victimology is pretty set, but this other serial killer is not having a consistent MO. In terms of which serial killer is doing it better, Dexter's doing a better job. He, of course, does have a code, whereas this other person does not. But I've also got to think there's got to be some sort of bigger overarching connection to these serial killer cases they're investigating and a bigger picture with the Miami PD, unless this is just for another big serial killer to emerge, and who knows, maybe even paving the way for a killer that we end up seeing more developed in Dexter proper. Another storyline that we see mirrored is we have Dex and the gang going on these double dates. Earlier, when he was stalking Levi, he's kind of saying to himself, do these methods work on women? And then he says, of course, asked and answered, when Levi ends up successfully getting some from his date at the bar. So Dexter takes some of these cues on his date, which, by the way, started off terribly. Obviously, Dexter does not have a lot of experience with women, so it was a little bit awkward, but then he starts channeling his inner Levi, which really pays off for him. I mean, the guy got a blowy in the bathroom from Sophia, which I think took him by surprise and was probably pretty exciting given that he had never had an experience like this before. So it's interesting, he's taking tips for dating from another serial killer who he ends up killing himself. Might I just add, my top favorite moment from this episode was when Dexter asks Sophia to wash her hands. Hey, I get it. I am a germaphobe, completely understand. But Dexter, that was not the time or the place. And you know what? Maybe this will help him be a little bit less rigid. I like how they're tying these things together in a way that doesn't feel too forced. And yeah, there are a lot of things going on here, but I've got to think that so far, I mean, I've come around to this Dexter prequel. At first, I was a little wishy-washy, thinking, okay, why do we need this? What's the point? But then they start dropping Easter eggs in here too. Now, this is something I actually did not notice, but when I was perusing my news feeds this morning, I saw a headline that said Ice Truck Killer Easter Egg in Dexter Original Sin. Of course, I clicked on it, and I didn't notice this. I mean, this is a blink and you will miss it moment. When Dexter is out there stalking Levi, there is an ice truck. The Miami Chills ice truck, which, by the way, is a fictional brand created for Dexter, that is beeping at him as he's crossing the street to get to Levi. Now, I doubt that is actually Brian, his brother's ice truck. I do think it is just a nod to it. But after we had that cameo from that strange character earlier in the series who asks Dexter if the seat was taken, which I didn't actually put the 2 and 2 together, although I should have, because I mean, that character looks so much like Brian from the original Dexter. So in a way, This is not only telling Dexter's origin story, but we are also getting more lore into his brother, who we know obviously that Harry does not adopt. And I like how this web is being weaved together. I love that they are dropping these Easter eggs, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing even more from other killers. I don't know, maybe the Trinity Killer, for instance. I mean, we know the Trinity Killer is getting its own spin-off, so it would make sense where they try to drop in some nuggets from John Lithgow's storyline as well, because let's face it, they are doing a great job. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The casting of this show is just top notch. Every single character. Deb, I mean, LaGuardia in this episode, Christina Milian is absolutely crushing it as LaGuardia. Her mannerisms, the way she looks. I mean, I just buy all of these characters so much and am so intrigued to see where their stories continue to go as we move through this first season. Then, something I had kind of predicted before was that Aaron Spencer's son, Nicky, ends up getting kidnapped. I thought so. Back when Dexter sat down next to him when he was playing the Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm thinking, why else would they be introducing his son unless he ends up being another victim? I mean, he's the son of a person in power in Miami. And now we know that he and Judge Powell could potentially be connected to a criminal's case who are targeting both of them. They do come to discover that Rafael Campos is a cartel drug dealer who does have that tie with both Judge Powell and with Aaron Spencer. So could it be him? Seems maybe a little too obvious this soon. I've got to think this could potentially be a red herring. And might I add, we had very little Sarah Michelle Gellar / Tanya in this episode once again. Why is that? Is there some kind of a setup here where she could potentially be tied in? Does she have some sort of murky history where there was a conflict that involved her or maybe a loved one with Aaron Spencer? With Judge Powell? I mean, she's connected to the law enforcement community. So I'm really starting to wonder if all the speculation of Sarah Michelle Gellar's character Tanya being a big bad in all of this could actually end up coming to fruition. They've determined with the timeline of Jimmy's disappearance and death, they probably have about 10 days to recover Nicky. And these people are very much pros. There was very little evidence left to go on. So things aren't looking good for Nicky, although it would make sense if Dexter ends up somehow figuring out who this person is, and perhaps they're also a serial killer, and then this ends up being Dexter's final victim of this season. We also see in this episode Dexter actually printing out the pictures of Levi's victims and showing it to him. And that is something we also saw in the original Dexter. So it is interesting to see how Dexter's code started, how his killing started, and really how his methodology is continuing to develop and grow and turn him into the Dexter that we know and love from the original series. Okay, now let's get into Harry and Laura. We learned that this affair has been going on for a good year. In that time, of course, Doris ended up getting pregnant, which Harry seemed surprised by, which made me think maybe they weren't actually sleeping together often. And now that we see Doris telling Harry that he has to end his affair, which she obviously knew about, but didn't seem too upset, could she have not been that upset because perhaps she was out there messing around too, and maybe Deb is not Harry's biological daughter? I mean, it's possible, right? But either way, when Laura wants out, tells Harry that, she's done with all of this, and then says that, Harry, would you put Doris into this type of danger? Burn, 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 baby. From what we know about Laura and her death, she does not have much time left. In fact, I would not be surprised if we lose both Harry and Laura by the end of this first season. In the original Dexter, as I've been saying, Harry ends up killing himself after Dexter's fourth victim. So that would be the next victim now that he is officially a serial killer with 3 under his belt. Could happen anytime. And then, of course, bye-bye Harry in the present day timeline. Similar to how Dexter ran into some issues with his attempt of killing Mad Dog, he's running into some issues disposing of Levi's body. The police are swarming the scene where the arm came to the surface, so Dexter's going to have to figure out exactly what he's going to do about this body, hence the title of episode 7, The Big Bad Body Problem. One more thing about Laura. We see Hector Estrada cut a finger off of somebody. We also had Jimmy Powell's finger cut off. So is it possible somehow Hector Estrada from way back in Laura's day and Harry's day could be tied into the fingers that are also being presented in the present day? I'm not sure, and I can't really connect those dots, but what are the actual odds of having multiple severed fingers within the storyline of a season? I mean, we are dealing with serial killers here, so of course it's possible, but why a finger? What do you think? Drop a comment and let me know. One storyline I'm not really sure of is the Dex seeing Clark at the gay club. I think Dex could care less if he's gay or not, but I wonder if that's going to get in Clark's head and somehow, I don't know, cause him to leave the force in fear that he's going to be outed. I'm not exactly sure where this storyline is going. It does feel a little bit extraneous, but I'm sure they have a good reason for it. Just haven't quite got there yet, right? Okay, I think one of my favorite things from this episode was the levity from the double date situation. We've got to remember, I mean, Deb is still in high school, Dexter is still 20 years old. These are young kids who recently lost their mom, and to see them kind of out there having fun, enjoying themselves, getting into a little bit of mischief, also seeing Dexter show up Geo in terms of getting that car started, Tiffany's car, I thought that was great. But I've got to think that this lighthearted mischief is probably going to snowball into a little bit more. Geo, while he does seem like he could be a decent guy, has the bad boy vibes about him. I see red flags all over the place. This could have been just the first step into Deb and Geo causing some mischief, and who knows, is Geo going to rope Deb into something else? Deb does need a little bit more going on this season, so I guess that is also to be determined, but I've got to think that there are going to be some more Deb-centric storylines happening because she definitely, as far as the Morgans go, has had the least screen time, the least plot, the least really forward movement, but that said, Molly Brown has just done an exceptional job playing her this entire time, so I am looking for more Deb content moving forward, and we'll see. I've got to think that Geo is going to be a big part of that. And I've got to say, while I was a little skeptical about this series at first, it's something I've been mentioning, after last week's episode or the one before that, I feel like I really have got over the hump with the justification for the origin story because they are giving us Easter eggs. They are giving us more context into a series where we did already have a lot of answers and knew a lot of things about Dexter and the people in his life, but they're expanding the universe in a way that's still interesting. We're still getting kind of this case of the week procedural type stuff with the bigger picture serialization of Dexter growing and becoming a serial killer, plus the ongoing Harry plot, and the ongoing cases at the Miami Metro as well. So I really like the formula here of the feeling of a police procedural while also offering the serialization and the deep story that the Dexter viewers love and appreciate. I'd really like to know, what did you think about this episode? I think things are really starting to come to a head. And yeah, there are a lot of storylines happening, but we've still got a lot of time to let some of these things breathe and give us more time leading into the finale for episode 10. But heads up, episode 7, The Big Bad Body Problem, will actually air on January 24th. It will not air next week on January 17th. So just a little heads up, Dexter will be missing a week, which actually works out great for me because January 17th is the premiere of Severance on Apple TV Plus, and you'd better believe I will be here to cover it. But before then, drop a comment and let me know what you thought about this Dexter episode, what you think about the origin story as a whole, and be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of my TV talk. I did drop a Silo Season 2 Episode 9 video earlier today. By the way, best episode of the season for anybody who's been maybe out on the season. You gotta jump back in because episode 9 is phenomenal. As I mentioned, I will be here covering Severance. I will cover The White Lotus in February and possibly the new Dan Fogelman from This Is Us series called Paradise, starring Sterling K. Brown, also from This Is Us, which drops on Hulu on January 28th. So might be giving that one a look, as well as The Hunting Party, a new high-level crime procedural on NBC, which is coming in early February. So again, Please hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate everybody being here and tuning in. I love making these videos. And actually, speaking of things I love, I won these super cute earrings from a company called Coops Crystals. She is a small business owner. That is COOPS Crystals. She's got an Etsy shop. Follow her on Instagram. These are the cutest earrings. If you know me, I'm here wearing my headband and earrings every single week. So I just wanted to shout out a small business who's awesome, and I got very lucky and won these beautiful earrings, so I just wanted to showcase them really quick. Thanks for letting me do that, and I hope to see you again for my next video. So, with that, Media Melanie, clicking off.